really nothing.
Celui-là est à l'envers.
Problem is to turn it a little bit. You're going to sit. Or are you sitting over there?
I'll sit there.
Just on the side. You retro visions need to stick together.
So, yeah.
Good.
Even if they won't like it, they will sit together. So.
Cheers.
Okay, everyone's ready?
Yeah.
For those microphones, you have to speak really close to them. Alright. Alright.
Cheers, Roberto. Alright, so we have one confident nerd here. Thank you.
One confident nerd.
I failed. So
I like the term confident nerd.
Give me a minute.
Oh, I talk a lot, don't worry.
Yeah.
Could be.
T'as fait beaucoup de vidéos?
Or I could do.
Et tu plais sur la carte.
Very possible.
Après, comme transférer les trucs avant. Hein.
Alright.
Vous avez regardé la vidéo? Ok, je vais appuyer sur play sur mon ordinateur. Record. If I speak, it should be. That's a go. Donc, avant qu'on commence le panel, est-ce que tout le monde est à l'aise avec l'anglais? Tu as besoin que je traduise? Ok, bon, tout le monde, good, parce que il y a du monde qui parle juste anglais sur le panel, like the American ones. doesn't speak French at all, so we're gonna do this in English, so that's will be fine. So, welcome everybody. We are at the panel how to get the best video quality from retro console when you play on either on CRT or on HD television. I think we have the best guys to speak about this topic. So, my name is Michael Larouche. I'm part of the Retrogamer.ca website. I'm the one with Jeremy. We are the guy we know how to do RGB on our side. We do French video about this. If you want to look about, we need to do a new one because the video we did is pretty old. We didn't have Framemeisters. We didn't have PVM, so we need to do a new video. So the first is Bob from RGB, like the main site you want to know about RGB. This is the guy.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't speak French.
No, that's fine. We are in Montreal, so we are bilingual by default. And next to him is René from DB Electronics. He's the one that's making the graphic booster for the Turbo PC engine and all that stuff. He's a good guy. He speaks French. He's the only one in this panel beside me that speaks French. The next up is Stay and Nick from HD Retrovision. They make component cable for Genesis, Super Nintendo, and more could come.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll let you guys do whatever you want. And also, this is Voltar.
Yes.
Can you explain why Voltar couldn't be here for more this guy?
I'm not allowed to talk about it. It involves poutine and a moose. So that's all we're allowed to talk about.
All right.
He's here with us in spirit. His body isn't what his caricature is. So we'll see him.
So I'll let you guys. I will just jump around and continue. Unless you have questions in the audience.
So in case anyone doesn't know, we do a podcast once a month. We just started 3 months ago. So Voltar is one of the guys on the podcast and couldn't be here, so he's here in spirit.
I can play Voltar, but even though I don't know much of the characters.
Yeah.
Apparently I'm a champion of life.
Yeah.
That's
He mostly just smokes during the stream anyway, so. So yeah, maybe we can each go and just quickly give a brief introduction to how we got into what we're doing.
Yeah, that should be a good topic because after that we should do like how to start when you start from scratch, how to get equipment to get the best video quality, So for the audience, so we know what you're talking about. So we can do, before introduce each of you, know, what's your backgrounds, where you come from, or could start with you guys.
Sure. Like I said, I'm Nick. Studied electrical engineering in college, and I've kind of gone off and done various things in my career, but me and Steve are a part of a company called HD Retrovision. Kind of the philosophy behind the company really is to make this stuff a lot more accessible, affordable. So there's a lot of kind of really cool stuff going on out there in this space of getting good quality out of your consoles, but a lot of it is expensive or just not kind of straightforward to your average consumer. So we want to do these things at scale, produce a lot of them, get it into the hands of a lot of people, and just make it easier for them to go about doing it without having to box up their console, send it off to a modder that maybe they don't trust or maybe they do, and all that stuff.
That doesn't use a lot of hot glue.
Yeah, exactly. Or have to go on eBay and buy something that they don't really know what they're getting. So we're kind of in the space of trying to make easy plug-and-play solutions for people. So that's really kind of the goal of what we've been doing. Maybe Steve can elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, what he said.
Can you guys use your microphone very closer, even though you're in the room and they're recording as well? So.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm Steve. Also study electrical engineering in school, and I like this retro stuff, and I've been fascinated with video, analog video, digital video for a while. And I kind of, like I said, I wanted to make this stuff more accessible, and I started like typing out on a piece of paper all these projects I want to do, and I wanted to call this the company HD Retrovision. And then a couple of years after that, we were like, okay, we got to actually make something now.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be
And so the things that we had prototypes for were the first two products we ended up making, which was component cables for Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, Sega Master System. And the real goal is to be able to, I mean, we've only accomplished really part of the goal. The end goal is to have like a whole universal solution that will work on anything in the future. Because right now component stuff is being phased out. So yeah, that's really our vision, and that's why the company is called HD Retrovision. It's just a bunch of like products that we want to make to facilitate that goal.
So the goal in the end would be to go with full HDMI and.
Right, to be able, you want to, like in 20 years, you want to pop your Chrono Trigger, right, and play it on your
8K,
16K TV. And so we want to provide a path that to allow that to keep happening.
Yeah.
That's really the main goal.
And there's some benefit to doing this stuff modular, as opposed to trying to build it directly, a Genesis cable directly to HDMI. By doing it modular, people can kind of mix and match what works for their system.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the right signals coming out of each console you want, and then eventually into some universal device that would take any of those and throw it into an upscaled HDMI signal. That's kind of the end goal.
Cool. About René, what's your backgrounds? Where you come from? You can say you come, whatever. How about you do background stuff, what all the guy did?
So I'm René, I'm the French guy, I'm from Ontario. I also study electrical engineering.
You fill our quota.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
25%, right? Is it?
It is kind of, to call myself.
Well, Voltar is
20%.
He's not there, so.
So yeah, I also study electrical engineering, and I got into doing retro projects because the work I was doing no longer involved anything engineering, because I work as a system admin for school board. So I decided I would produce modelless expansions for a lot of the retro consoles. That kind of fell in line with what these guys are doing, right? Because they're doing modelless RGB and whatnot. and component. And after doing FM power base and whatnot, I noticed that a lot of people were attempting to mod their TurboGrafx consoles, and they were completely ripping them apart.
Yeah.
So I thought I need to rescue all these consoles, and I should make a modless adapter that allows people to save and rescue their consoles.
Yes, that's funny because on the Turbo and the PC Engine, like the extension connector in the back, you got everything you need to do that. So it's just a matter of just doing a proper device to plug.
And there exist other kinds of devices out there that'll do what mine does, and maybe we'll talk about them a bit, but they're not ideal.
Yeah.
Stay away.
Yeah, stay away from them.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I'll call you the preacher, RGB. Don't be a great term to describe you. So where do you come from? Why did you decide to do a retro RGB?
Reverend Bob.
Yeah.
Reverend Bob.
Well, I run the website and the YouTube channel for RetroRGB.com, which the whole point of it is to get the best the best video and audio signals out of your old consoles. But it's also in archiving that information in one place so that it's kind of there forever for everybody to use. And the weekly podcast that I do kind of keeps everybody up to speed on anything new going on in the community. But I always had kind of a technical background, and I've always been like the technical middleman for projects, whether it was a project manager for something awesome that I got to design out in Asia, or just like a network lead. So it kind of, all those skills fit perfect because I'm an expert at nothing, but I know just enough about everything to get, to make all the bad mistakes. I'm lucky enough to make a bunch of really good friends, including our hanging friend here, that I work with now and help compile all this information into one place. So, although I would never call myself the Reverend, the middleman is the one I'm comfortable with. I like just taking all the amazing work everybody else has done, credit them for it, and stick it up on the website with some easy to follow guides. Because that's the other thing I found is a lot of people, like Steve, would post these amazing technical explanations of things that most people would look at and go, what? And then other guys would post a picture and, and you couldn't really figure out what it needed. So I just kind of broke it down into steps, and it seems to be a help so far. But every month goes by and we learn something new and have to add something. So it's an ongoing thing, but I hope to keep doing it as long as I can.
That's pretty cool. That's the website I use when I go into RGB stuff was like the Bible was retrorgb.com. So what do we say to a beginner that want to go into all these technical? It's a hard domain to go into. So especially go RGB with SCART cables, it can get expensive really fast. So what do you say to a beginner that's okay? I plug my Super Nintendo into my new HD TV. It looks like shit. What could I do instead?
Well, that's, for me, there's kind of two answers to that. The first thing that I always say is pick the cheapest solution that fits your needs. So if you already have a CRT TV and you already have a Super Nintendo, maybe just start with that. Or get a Wii or a Raspberry Pi and start with emulation, because it's one of those things where until you start playing, you don't really know how important it is to you.
Yeah.
But if you know you want to take that extra step, my favorite first step is always actually to grab either their cables or maybe use their cables and Renee's graphics booster, because there's no mods. You just plug it in and then you could go into a flat screen TV, or if you're lucky enough to have a CRT with component inputs, because it's a no lag solution. So you don't have to worry about stepping into that world and spending hundreds of dollars on upscalers and everything else. And it's just a great first step, and they're tools that you could use along the way, even if you decide to upgrade eventually.
So let me preempt the internet trolls here
No.
from picking apart your answer, but no lag into the CRT, but then you're at the flat panel, you're at the mercy of the flat panel.
Your solutions don't add any lag to
Right.
whatever solution that you're going to. But that's actually, we were talking after our planes landed yesterday, and a friend of mine said that she wanted to go get a console for her brother so they could play their old Nintendo cartridges on it. And I showed her what lag was, and even though she's not a technical person, she immediately realized as soon as you start trying to play on a really bad laggy TV, you press the button and you can actually notice a delay before Mario jumps, and you can't play the game. So lag is probably I would say lag is much more important over compatibility for using old consoles on newer TVs.
Yeah, if your TV doesn't have like something called a game mode, something like that just disable all the filter or processing the TV does. Yeah, that'll be a good segue. Why the TV does that? You are technology. Why the TV has to do processing for?
Well, so a lot of people, I think, maybe in some ways misunderstand the value of the external upscaler. The reason it's so good is not because it's doing something very intelligent. It's actually doing the worst type of upscaling. But because of the type of content we're using in these retro games, that looks good to people. But using that type of upscaling in any other scenario is a no-no. So to kind of bring that back to the question, the TV is trying to do a lot of things that are very intelligent for movie content. This is all content dependent, is what it comes down to. So it's trying to up frame rates to make a smooth, movie. Because sometimes you'll see kind of this judder effect in movies when it's panning, for instance. It's trying to smooth that out. And all these things are detrimental to what we want to use the TV for. So that's kind of why a TV has all of these things going on that you would just want to shut off.
Yeah, because for retro console you want like something in technical terms like nearest neighbor upscaling. Basically what it means just you took a square and just double the square or triple the square. Basically there's no filter, no trying to blur or something like that. You just want the scale the square to be bigger. That's it. And the TV doesn't work like that. So that's why we need external upscaler that dumb enough to just do that.
Yeah, if you try doing that with a modern movie like Guardians of the Galaxy that just came out.
If you pop a 480 DVD in there,
Yeah.
it's going to look terrible if you were to use the type of upscaling a Framemeisters would do.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So that's why the TVs don't have it built in, because most people wouldn't be looking to take old consoles and your average consumer. So they put the technology in to make it look great for movies and TV, but not for old games, which makes sense actually.
Yeah, because the market for like retro gamers is not that big compared to people that want to watch their DVDs or even VHS if they're crazy enough to watch the VHS on flat screen TV. So we're speaking about upscalers, external upscaler. What these kind of device, what the kind of range of upscaler we can get. Like, what's the difference between all of them?
Well, I'll start out with the lowest one because I absolutely hate it.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
There is a $40 converter that is basically SCART to HDMI, and there's two huge problems with it. The first thing is that it adds 5 to 6 frames of lag, which makes a game just unplayable. I have video proof. People say you're exaggerating. I can prove it. And the other problem with it is it processes the 240p progressive signal as interlaced. So basically, you have this smooth signal, all the lines are being drawn across the screen, and now it turns it into this flickery image and upscales the flickery image, not the smooth one. So it looks bad and it plays bad, and I do know that a lot of people have used that as their stepping stone into gaming. And I wonder how many people bought that thing and then said, you know what, I don't even like this anymore, and not realized because it looked bad and because it had so much lag. But that's the one that I definitely say, unless you have a specific use for it, stay away from that one.
Yeah, it's a good stepping stone into the world RGB. That's the first one I use. Like, it's better than much upscaler that TV has in turn because they are designed for movies. And this is designed for a movie as well, but not for gaming.
Well, that's actually something I did. I spent weeks doing this one review of how the different upscalers work, and the conclusion I came to is that almost every single TV that I tried, if you used their cables with output component video, it looked way better. And on some plasma TVs, like I have a Panasonic Plasma, it looked amazing. It looked just about as good as a 480p signal would have. So by skipping the box altogether, it looks better because it processed as progressive, and it didn't add any lag other than, I think my Plasma has about 2 frames. So it made them playable. So that's why I would recommend that as the first step instead of that.
But it's not always That's not always universal.
It's not always perfect, and your TV itself might add a lot. I mean, I've seen a few bad Visios with like 5 or 6 frames. One, if you don't use it in game mode, it was 9 frames of lag.
Oh my god.
But it did have a game mode, so as long as you turn that on, it went down to like 3, which is still tolerable. But so yeah, I mean, it's not every situation, but I would much rather see somebody drop money on a solution that you could use somewhere else and have it not be the perfect thing than buy that SCART to HDMI thing, which is almost never useful. So
If I can comment on that SCART 2 HDMI box, I have one, and all the tests I made at home, just like, I mean, my opinion looking at the TV, I found that it looked equivalent, if not worse, than just component straight into my LCD.
you mean composite?
Composite, sorry.
Yeah.
So anyways,
So the whole point is trying to
yeah.
get a SCART connector to interface to your TV, and it ends up destroying the whole point.
Yeah,
of-
Yeah.
if it's going to look as bad as composite, you might as well just plug your composite and save yourself 5 frames of lag.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, I mean, this kind of maybe an overlooked point here is if you're going to be gaming on modern TVs, one of the things you need to pick first is the TV that you want to game on.
Yeah,
That's a huge factor. You can do all this cool stuff with expensive products, but I think it's important to pick the right television.
yeah,
for this.
first.
And
Absolutely.
to date, there's no great place that has all this information. You can go on various forums and read a bunch of wrong things if you want. But I mean, at least in our experience, there are certain brands that we could at least generalize that seem to be better than others, and certain brands that you just want to stay away from.
But each model year is different too. So,
Yeah.
you know, Voltar over here got himself a D-Series 50-inch Vizio. That was last year's model. Very, very low lag. It was 4K. It processed old signals well. I bought a 42-inch version of that panel, and it was completely different. Even though rtings.com and the other tests said it's the same, it was not. It was different. So that's the main reason why I don't have a chart up on the site, because I would have to have the model number, the size, the year, and everything else. I'm working on it, but it's, you know, it's people are going to have to report in. But I couldn't agree more, though. Your TV should be the first thing. And they do make, you know, quote-unquote gaming monitors. But that's the same thing. I bought one of those that was, they said it was 3 milliseconds response time. And I fed a signal and cloned it to a CRT and did the usual, you know, DSLR slow motion tests. And it had about a frame of lag, which is great, but it's not 3 milliseconds. You know, that's about...
response time is different.
Yeah, it's
Well,
different,
that's... Yeah, I'm sorry, but the whole thing was advertised as the lowest lag.
Right.
But there is a BenQ 1080p that came in at almost 0. So you could look for this stuff, but hopefully I'll be... But also you can't get that anymore new. You have to find it used. So it's just a nightmare trying to find it. And I'm trying to find an efficient way to categorize that information.
Actually, and since you bring up Voltar's TV, I think that's a good TV to illustrate the issue that the amount of lag a TV has can be different across its inputs. So you can plug things into your HDMI 1 and get a lot more lag than HDMI 5, and I think that's exactly how that TV is designed.
As a special gaming or low latency HDMI
Right.
5 input.
Personally, we both like Samsungs a whole lot. Those seem to perform really well. I mean, we both plug our component cables directly into the Samsung without any upscaler, and the lag doesn't appear to affect us in any meaningful way.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to question. Generally, computers get faster every year. So I was just wondering, over time, does the lag?
Sorry.
Do I wait for the mic?
No. It's too complicated to do that.
Yeah, we can hear you.
The people in the recording the dudes like, what?
With newer TVs, is the lag getting smaller or about the same?
So there's kind of a limit on how low you can go, because so when you process something, let's say you're getting a signal like from a Super Nintendo, and its refresh rate is slightly off. It doesn't match the display you're driving. So the TV knows that it needs to be able to drive the display at a specific frequency, so it stores the data in something called a frame buffer. So it stores a whole frame, and it can't push that out until one frame is ready to go. And so the time for one frame is 16.67 milliseconds, which is 1/60. And so if it has to do that process, then that's the smallest it can do. And no matter how fast you get with your process, you can't. Otherwise, you'll get tearing on your screen, right? And you'll get that VSync type of error. So I don't think you can get below that if you need to guarantee that if your input signal's kind of wonky, you need to be able to still drive the panel in your monitor. So
And as processing gets faster, they just start using up that processing to do more and more complicated things. TVs now do all sorts of crazy stuff that they weren't doing when they had slower processors.
Well, just to answer another part of your question, though, generally speaking, a newer TV might not have less lag than an older TV. So if you bought a 2017 TV, there's no guarantee that's going to have less lag than a 2016 TV. And a lot of times the panel manufacturers, especially ones, and I'm not talking bad about the brand, but especially manufacturers like Vizio, who are designed to say, well, I want to get the cheapest TV I possibly can out. They know they can tweak it to have less lag, but then the cost is going to go up $10 times, 20,000 a month, whatever they ship. That's a lot of money. So
then going back to what we were talking about before, it'll have less lag, then it'll look worse on modern content.
Right. So that's the other side of your question. It's just because it's newer might not necessarily mean you'll have less lag. It's just the best way to do it is, try it out, check the forums, see. I'll try to get something up there by the end of the year, but like I said, I don't know how I could possibly do it that way. Sorry, we've cut you off like 4 times now.
It's okay. I was wondering if you guys ever heard of the Sony W model series. I'm not even sure if they're making them anymore, but I remember reading in forums how extremely popular they were with gamers because it was supposedly zero lag.
It wasn't zero, but it was very low, and they stopped making the low lag version in 2015. So
That's a shame.
yeah.
So anyone else has questions so far? All right. So which topic we could call to continue next?
Well, if we're talking about modern TVs, you have to at least mention the Framemeisters, I guess.
Yeah, the almighty Framemeisters. So there are 2 ways to go with. You can either buy these guys' cable or go with the European standard. And when we mean the European standard, that's why it was being SCART all the time. That's the name of the standard used in Europe for plugging TVs. And they got enough pins to transfer all RGB, which what it means that each color is sent on a separate signal, so you don't have crosstalk between signals, so it's clean signal, and it's just simpler to use the cable from Europe because they are already designed. You don't have to use a weird shaped connector. You can use scalar that have been done in Japan or Europe, and that's why we want to use European cable. And for do that, you need to buy upscalers. You want to plug that into an American TV that uses HDMI. They don't have SCART SCART connection, but LCD in Europe do have the SCART connector built in. Those lucky bastards.
I think Jared just told me yesterday that there was a law mandate that they had to put those connectors on, and that expired recently.
Yeah. So in France, actually this is a standard that was developed in France, and I think starting in '83, it was mandated that TV need to have this connector. That's why it was so widespread across Europe. And then in 2017 or 16, you just said, that's old stuff. Nobody plugged VCR. I think they don't think about retro gaming people. They don't care about us. So that's why you need to use upscalers. And unfortunately, the best one, the most less trouble-ish is the Framemeisters because what's the price in US dollars right now?
Well, you can't just buy a Framemeister. You also have to buy the SCART converter.
Yeah.
And unless you speak Japanese, you have to buy the overlay for the remote.
Yeah.
So you're really talking close to $400 US by the time you're done with it.
From here it's like 550 to 550, like with the import, the yeah, $16 right now. It's like
It's going up in price now because they're not making it.
yeah, I think one chip inside the Framemeister is not produced anymore, so that's why they stopped making it. So I just hope they design a new one that supports 4K TV. So yeah, the Framemeister is expensive, but it is worth it for me at least. And when I switched from the cheap Chinese box to this, I was like blown away. And would immediately justify the price I paid for that. So yeah, Upscalers. That's like I said every time one of my friends asks me for questions about RGB, he's like, it's gonna be expensive, right? You have to buy like $20 cables. You have to do this, buy this. If you want to play the old NES, you have to mod it. It's like, oh my god, this is insanely crazy how complicated it can be really fast.
Well, the reason it gets expensive, I'm not sure how many people here are aware of kind of what RGB is, but to break it down on the simplest level, because I don't want to talk forever, but the best signal that those analog consoles produce is RGB. So when it's on, like imagine a computer's video card, that's a chip on all these consoles, and that produces an RGB signal, and then that's broken down to, S-video, composite, RF, and all that stuff. So by buying these expensive and kind of hard to find RGB cables, that is pulling the best signal out because you want to upscale the best. You don't want to take, the worst image, you want to take the best. So that is, that's why you have to spend all the money on the consoles. And the Framemeister is the one that's, the most popular. And the two things about it that are really great are that they'll work on any TV. You just plug it in and it works. And there's a person named, his screen name is Firebrand X, and he put a ridiculous amount of time into making these profiles. So if you want to play like Super Nintendo, plug it in, you load up the Super Nintendo profile, it looks perfect on your TV. But it is expensive. It adds a frame and a half of lag, and it doesn't process the colors as good as it does. So that's why it's always second choice for me.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we have issues with it, is because it doesn't do a very good job of component video at all. In fact, it's probably designed improperly for component video.
For RGB, I think it's the most hassle-free.
Hassle-free because
Scaler meant for retro.
yeah, I think it's designed for retro. I think you look at we have the box up there so you can look after the podcast what the way it looks like for.
How's your Japanese?
We do have some people that understand Japanese in the audience, not in the audience, but staff. And one of our friends actually lived in Japan for 8 years, so he knows Japanese, so we can translate that.
So I was going to say, like, if we're talking about the Framemeister, the first major problem you encounter when you want to build yourself a Framemeister setup is getting a SCART cable.
Yeah.
And not just any SCART cable, but the right SCART cable that's not going to be damaging anything.
Poorly, I have to trouble saying poorly built. Finding a good quality cable is our topic.
Yeah. Because the SCART cables, especially when we're talking about Genesis, they have components on the inside.
Yeah.
Right, and those components are very important. And some cables you'll buy, they'll be missing some components, or they won't have the right value, or they'll even add an amplifier on some of the signals, and they'll pretend that it removes the jail bars when it does nothing.
Yeah.
The worst one, we've seen ones from, I think it was Play Asia or some a Hong Kong reseller. There's no components at all, and it's made with like the same guts as you would make with a network cable. So if you just do this a couple times, it'll break anyway. And it's terrible.
It's worse than a network cable. Like those things I just strip with my fingernails.
Yeah, so that's a big deal.
Yeah. So while we're on the topic, where consider the best place to buy the SCART cables?
Well, it's always changing, and a lot of these. I guess the most
Right now?
Right now,
Yeah.
right now.
The guy in the UK.
The UK guy, yeah.
I would say Rob, and I think the reason I recommend his a little bit more is because there's so many different model revisions of every console. There's so many scenarios that you wouldn't really run into unless you really are trying to get the best quality out of your consoles. And he's really just trying to stay on top of that, and he's listening to feedback. And every time we find a scenario where it's one of these crazy scenarios that you almost never run into, he'll step up and say, okay, well, I'll just add a different model for that one. the way he's making the shielded cables, he really went out of his way to make the correct molds, and to have the tools built so he presses down, so there's proper strain relief. So you could do this with this cable and it doesn't snap in half. So as far as unshielded cables though, I mean, I've had luck with both him and the Florida seller. But if you want, if you're really going for, I want to spend the most money, get the best quality, I will be upgrading all of my stuff to his shielded cables.
And he's Retro Gaming Cables is the name of his.
Yeah, Retrogaming cable.
.co.uk.
And he makes it real easy. I mean, I hadn't spent a lot of time on his website previously, but the last time I checked, he's got it. So there's a bunch of drop-down menus. You select exactly what you need, and he'll get you the right cable. We've talked on our podcast previously. This is kind of an important thing because you don't want to be doing damage to your $550 Canadian Framemeisters because you bought the wrong cable, and it's very possible to do that.
Yeah, the example of that is you can get a SCART cable for Genesis or Super Nintendo or whatever that does TTL sync, right? And if you plug that into your PVM, it's probably going to work, right?
Yeah.
The PVM is going to be happy with that. If you plug it into a cheap upscaler, it's probably doing sync on composite, so it's not even going to care about that sync signal. So again, it's still going to work. So you might think your cable's fine, but then you take that TTL sync cable and you plug it into a Framemeister, and all of a sudden you're exceeding the limits of one of the chips in the Framemeister, and it could damage it.
Right, the analog voltage on those chips is like 1.8, and you're running a 5-volt signal into there, and it's got protection, but the protection is for temporary. It's not a constant.
For short ESD bursts.
Right.
Right.
And I always try to break these things down into, like, when you're talking about different voltages and stuff, is this something that's going to break your console right now? Like, you plug it in and it shorts out? Or is this something where, like, it's not the right thing to do, but maybe you would have lasted 50 years, now it'll last 49 and a half? Or is it something that really will just wear down? Like if you drive with your emergency brake up. And that is essentially what this is doing. This is not, it'll be fine. You're going to significantly lower the lifespan of certain components. Some are designed to handle all, but
It might be better for everyone if it would just blow the Framemeisters out right away, because then people will be really careful about doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, it's that maybe cuts your lifespan in half, so you don't really know it until the day a thing dies.
Slow, painful death.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of cables, the infamous GameCube component cable. I know there's a chip inside that would you guys be able to reverse engineer it and produce your own cable eventually? Or
Someone in Germany did that already.
It's been reverse engineered for a while now.
Yeah,
You could make your own if you want to. It's all open source. They provide the
GCV DLC, right? It's a project.
Correct, and that's if you want to buy an FPGA board, you could assemble it yourself and do it. And some people do, and some people stay away from the ones where there's a haphazardly cut hole in the back of the GameCube with this thing hanging out of it. That really does happen. But there is a couple people working on plug-and-play versions that you just stick in the back. I tested one prototype already that, as far as prototype goes, I thought it was great. And he's in the middle of improving that one. There's another one that's been infamously delayed a couple times, but I think when that eventually does come out, it's going to be a great solution. So there are cheaper ways to do that coming out soon, and the HDMI, direct to HDMI, looks great. I mean, you don't get any of the potential analog interference through it. So, but if you're impatient and like tinkering, you could definitely just order an FPGA kit and do it all yourself.
And we've talked about this before when anyone ever asked us. Actually, the problem with the GameCube cable is not the chip that's in there, it's actually manufacturing that connector. That's the hard part and the very expensive thing to do if you want to do it properly. It's a proprietary thing. It's not like the Genesis where we were able to just go buy thousands and thousands of mini DIN connectors.
Yeah, that's Nintendo. They're trying to use like really shaped connectors.
Proprietary.
Yeah, and go to like Sega and new SNK. They use like all standard connectors like DB5, DB15 for the controllers, and DB8 for the videos connectors. So yeah, that's Nintendo. Nintendo is really, when you're speaking about video quality, Nintendo is really the real pain in the ass in the end. depending on which console. Like the NES, you have to mod it. The SNES, the Model 2 doesn't have RGB. The N64 doesn't have RGB, and the GameCube, like, you have to use like properly digital connector and.
Yeah,
The output's
because of
pretty
that chip, nobody ever bothered designing a third-party connector for it.
Yeah,
This is like the SNES multi-out. You can get those easily.
yeah, it's pretty easy to find out like new 3D printed connectors
Yeah,
for that.
somebody open sourced a few of them.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know what time it is. We already still.
Five minutes.
We still have some 5 minutes, so.
We're supposed to take like some of my time too. I don't need an hour.
All right then. Oh, that's fine. We can do it. So do you want some more?
Sure. I got another.
Yeah, you got.
Sorry, because PlayStation 2, since the majority of games output 480i.
Yeah.
Am I better off using a SCART RGB cable or just component?
SCART RGB, definitely. It's just, especially because if you already have a bunch of other consoles, you just integrate it into your existing setup. Same switch, same everything else, and it is, and RGB isn't always going to be noticeably better than component, but on a PlayStation 2, RGB will be better than component, especially if you end up going to a flat screen. It's small, but I mean,
This has to do with the PlayStation 2's component
video chip inside
chip specifically.
Yeah, so.
And also, the component doesn't work with PS1 game. If I recollect me.
It does.
It does?
Yeah.
That's not it's not on the PlayStation side, it's on the TV side.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It does, but the majority of TV would just reject that.
All right.
It's a 240 has to accept 240.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, makes sense. I got RGB cable for PS3, PS2, so I don't have this problem. Right.
I have a question. Maybe I misunderstood it. I think you said the Framemeister was your second best option. What's the difference?
My favorite is the open source scan converter, but there's there's one huge problem with it and one smaller problem. The big, huge problem is that it's not guaranteed to work on every TV. And just to try to make it as quickly as I can, it upscales the resolution, but it doesn't touch the refresh rate. So a lot of TVs aren't compatible. And for whatever reason, if you put it in 480 mode, so doubling, it will work with almost everything I've ever. In fact, it has worked with everything I've ever tried in 480p mode. But as soon as you go to 720 and 1080, the TVs get pickier and pickier the higher you go because of that refresh rate. So that's the only issue I really have with it that I wouldn't immediately say, everybody should switch to this, is that you don't know if it's going to work with your TV until you get it home. The only other thing is, much like the Framemeister, there's many little ways that you can tweak it for each console. And you can save it. You have 10 different save slots, but it's slot 0, slot 1, and you can't save that to an SD card and move it. So even though I would love to mail Firebrand X an OSSC and say, have at it, my friend, there's nothing he could write down, but then even nerds like me, I don't want to sit on a web page and just copy every setting and save it. I would love to just throw that in.
Yeah.
So those are the two issues. The second one is very small, but the first one is big. You're about to spend $200 on something and you won't know if it works the way you want it to until after you've already plugged it into your TV.
For me, the biggest issue I have with the OSSC is no HDMI.
Oh, it's just a dongle. It's just a $2 dongle.
Yeah, but it doesn't have audio. Like,
It does now. Anybody that
Oh, yeah.
from this point on. So if you've already ordered one today, you need to upgrade with the chip to audio. But anybody that orders from now on, audio is already going to be built in.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And the audio
That
ports are
changes
hard.
That's why I never looked into that.
Yeah, because
I
it's
thought
only
the biggest-
DVI, so it's like, it doesn't have audio, so we can just grab a cable and put it back into your capture card.
And there is, if you already own one, there is an audio board that you can install on it, but it was really hard, so I made Steve do it for me.
I thought you were going to say the biggest problem with the OSSC is you can't get one.
No, they're working on that, and it's about to be just open orders. So that's they've pretty much cured that problem very soon from that. So
Well, in the past, that's been the biggest. It's been supply constraints. So.
Yeah.
Maybe we can clarify a bit too, as you're saying that it doesn't touch the refresh rate at all, and that has to do with the OSSC doesn't really have a frame buffer.
and
No, it's
right?
only line
So-
doubling.
Yeah, so it's not an upscaler as much as it's a line doubler.
Yeah, which is exactly what we as gaming nerds want.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it goes back to what I said earlier, like if you want to have full compatibility when you're driving, you need at least that one frame buffered up. So the lowest you can get with that is the 16 point.
Yeah, in a perfect world, that would be a switch on it. So it would come by default with the frame buffer off. Try it on your TV. If it doesn't work, flip the frame buffer on. It would be fine. But that's a lot of work. To
And
add.
let's add a frame buffer is not a firmware update.
No, you need to have enough space for RAM,
Yeah.
for on the FPGA to start to do that.
Probably not
It
going
would
to
be the new
happen.
FPGA. That one is
Yeah.
at max capacity now.
All right. So I think you're the one in contact with the guy who does it, right?
Yeah,
Are you in
I talked-
contact as well with the guy who do the OSSC or for you?
I think
No,
really, I talk to him on a kind of regular basis. Marcus, he's very friendly. He's a nice guy. You could email him if you wanted. So he's pretty open to people talking to him.
So yeah, right now, at least he does 720p, which is something I want. So the OSSC is getting more and more interesting now. Because just because I have to tell people like when I didn't know it was doing audio, was like, he doesn't do audio, so it's not plug and play. I can not take a guy, just buy this and plug it into TV, plug in the SCART cable, and so now that TVI of our audio is much more interesting now.
And do you know if there is a list of the compatible TVs for OSSC right now?
There is a list up on Video Game Perfection somewhere.
Okay, so that's hard. That's a hard list to
Yeah,
to
just
compile.
Yeah, you have to
right.
ask a lot of people at different TV. You can ask one guy to buy our TV and test it. That's financially impossible to do.
You
It's,
have
it's
to
not.
go.
It's, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So they have to go to Costco with a big setup and a cart.
Yeah.
I was actually planning on doing that before I moved. I was going to go in with a rolling cart into a Best Buy, but I ended up moving and couldn't do it. I also couldn't find anybody I knew that worked at one of those stores, because if I were to just walk in and say, I'm going to plug this little box that that looks suspicious into every one of your TVs.
the thing that makes it harder with the OSSC is not only do you don't just have OSSC into multiple TVs, you have multiple different types of inputs
Yeah.
through OSSC into multiple
To
different TVs, so you're
Right, so Genesis could
multiplication
work,
factor.
but not Super Nintendo or Neo Geo.
Yeah.
So.
That's actually something we see with our cables. Is there are TVs where they will accept a Sega Genesis 240p component signal and reject it from SNES because of the refresh rate.
Or we believe it's.
We believe it's
I
refresh
think
rate.
there's other things in play I'm working on researching.
Yeah, there was a lot,
Yeah,
like
some
Wes from
shaping.
Second Opinion Games used your cable with his N64, it worked flawlessly, but not with the SNES. So it's,
That's weird because you have to mod the N64, so
right, but it's the way the N64 output's slightly different than the SNES, so.
like I said, Nintendo is a pain in the ass for video quality.
Not just video quality.
Yeah, you're not doing the panel about the glass parts saying this area. I mean, I used to be like huge, like, oh, the Super Nintendo is best because you have more color and shit. And this guy did a panel about all the Genesis work, and Julie was like, oh, he's right. So yeah, the Genesis is pretty designed for an hardware point of view, and it's Nintendo engineer like just act the king all the time. I mean, for a guy like me that does the programming part, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of wacky shit. And look at especially on this for Nintendo, look at all the Genesis work with this better CPU and shit. Like, oh man, Genesis, but it doesn't have enough color for me.
Yeah, with those motherboard layouts.
Yeah.
So these guys joke about going into a Costco. I actually did that. So I went into a Best Buy and got kicked out of there. And then I went into a Costco with a Raspberry Pi, kind of makeshift 240p over HDMI detector, or testing device, because we wanted to understand how TVs were doing with that old resolution over HDMI. Normally you hear about these compatibilities over component, but it's not too often that you get a 240p signal flowing over HDMI. So built one on a Raspberry Pi. But really the point I wanted to get across is even though they allowed me to do it, I still felt totally sketchy like a scumbag, like pulling TVs out and plugging my thing in, and I felt like everyone was watching me, just waiting for me to get out of there. Even though they told me it was fine.
You need a clipboard. If you have a
Yeah.
clipboard, it makes it really efficient.
I did have a notebook and I was, writing stuff
Okay.
down, but
It's not a clipboard.
I don't think I'd want to be rolling a cart around there
Yeah.
with a big battery power my.
But even if we did,
Yeah.
even if we got permission, even if we filmed it and sponsored by Best Buy, and we did 200 TVs and we have this comprehensive list, it's the same as why I don't have the TV list on my website. It's the same problem with the video game perfection compatibility. What if it all changes next year? What if they upgrade their video chips? What if they change the panels in one of them?
Yeah, so
Or like many manufacturers do, what if halfway through the year they go, oh, we're out of AUO panels. We'll just use Samsung and slap those in. So it's the compatibility is really, really hard.
So we actually do have a 240p over component compatibility list on our website. The reason kind of behind this was, we did a Kickstarter and we were really having trouble conveying to people, before we released our cables for the first time, that this was not guaranteed to work on your TV.
Yeah.
You had to go test it, but we wanted to give people something to they could look at least for the people that weren't going to actually listen to us and test their TVs specifically. So we built out a list, and it's a few years old now. I've seen.
When you click on the links on that list, it goes to this product no longer exists thing. Do you click on the Samsung TVs? Because I went to go reference those the other day, and it went to an Amazon dead link.
That's
It's
fine.
not
Not
linked to
Amazon.
Amazon. It's Costco.
Yeah, Costco. Yeah,
I'm not
Costco.
talking about our recommended TVs. I'm talking about we have the list of this TV is compatible. This
Oh,
one
right,
isn't.
yeah,
This
yeah.
one is. And that's 3 years old now. So
But they do have a guide on how to test your own TV with a composite video cable.
yeah.
So
that's-
even though you're going into component, you plug it in the composite in, and you'll be able to test whether it works or not. So I link to that all the time. That's genius. Good job, guys.
Yeah, that's actually more important to have that self-testing procedure than to have any list. I mean, I've seen that list get linked to on all sorts of forums because it's kind of useful. But then I'll see comments like, "Those guys really ought to update that list. It's out of date." It's like I'm not gonna, every year go into a Best Buy and Costco and risk getting kicked out of there just to
Why
update
not?
a list for you.
Why not?
The millions you paid from your company isn't
Yeah,
allowed to
right.
buy one of every TV.
Alright, we got another question here.
So just wondering, like, your solution, do you find that it works for, would you say, most TVs, minority of TVs?
Depends on the brand. So if we're talking about like what's out there like right now, I could try to generalize for you and give you an idea.
But not let's say, would you say like it works for like 15% of your TVs?
More.
Or just say
So
it's
you
tough.
really
I don't
gotta-
know. I don't know how
yeah.
many Samsungs are out there versus how many people have Vizio. So it's really hard for me to do it like that. I could say that Samsungs, we have no problems with any console, and they process the 240p correctly, so you get the flashing effects. Vizios,
Well,
I'm
with
not-
the Samsung above, they're like super cheap.
anything 1080p or higher
Yeah.
right now. And then the Vizios, Genesis works on all of them, or almost all of them, and SNES works on none of them. And then LGs are mostly not work on either, but I've seen higher end ones work on both. Sony's, same thing, close to the Vizio where the Genesis works. Some SNESs work. It's not like Vizio where I've never seen a SNES work on it. What else?
I guess another way to phrase the question is, how many returns do you get?
Zero. We've had 0 returns. But
It helps that our policy is no.
That's a good reason why to not get refund or returns.
But
I don't even know if that's the reason. I think the reason is because the people have been flipping them.
Yeah,
you
can scalp them
Yeah.
on eBay.
Yeah.
I think a more realistic reason is that people generally have more than one TV. So it's, oh, darn, it doesn't work on my living room TV. Well, screw it, put it in the bedroom.
And
So,
we
That's a
give
good
people
point.
a test procedure, which kind of cuts down on some of that. And a surprising number of people have CRTs with component inputs that they want to use their console on.
That's what I was going to say. I use it strictly on CRT. It makes the setup a whole lot easier because the component switch is a lot cheaper than the SCART switch.
Tell me about it. I just bought the SCART switch.
Yeah,
I mean,
the new light one.
No, the one that's actually set up in
Oh,
it. That's mine. Was like 330
Really? With
bucks.
shipping and tax?
Yeah, with shipping and then the import, not the no import, but just the conversion between the American and Canadian dollar. I mean, it's worth it, but like really, like for a switcher. Like,
I helped a couple distributions ago with that, and some of the people were telling me how much they had to pay for import tax. And two people in the same city, one would have to pay it and one wouldn't, and there was no way to tell. I felt so
I didn't
bad.
pay I didn't pay duty, import taxes, but just the conversion between the Canadian and American dollar made the price go way up.
The new light that came out is a whole bunch cheaper.
Yeah.
It's 180 US plus 35 US shipping.
The thing is, if I bought, because they're so scared, as soon as Rob puts it on Twitter, I was like, I have to buy these. And then next week, he announced the SCART light. I was like, really?
They're each better for certain setups.
Yeah.
So actually, this is one of the times where if you did flip it on eBay, it would probably be a help. But I yell at my friend. One of my friends always buys two of everything just because he's obsessed. And sometimes when he realizes he has too many, he'll put it on eBay. And I'm so mean to him. Like, don't you dare scalp it. So he usually puts it on for $1, and whoever, at that point, if somebody pays too much, it's their fault, not my friend's.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he always gets his money back. That's for sure.
The thing is, it's really cool about the line is the originate the sync signal. So even the sync signal is a bit shitty, will originate a clean signal for it. That's what kind of jealous about this.
I'm getting mine next week. I can't wait to test
Yeah.
on Neo Geo.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about FPGA consoles? And it seems like it could be in the future a one-stop solution to get a really good picture.
Yeah.
But somehow, as a retro gamer, I don't know. I feel kind of weird to use them.
Yeah,
what are your
it's
thoughts on that?
I'm a big fan.
So
Yeah,
it depends on the case, right? So if you're going to ask me whether I'd rather take, I don't particularly have one, but if I had an NES from my childhood that I was kind of emotionally attached to, I would rather not do some kind of hack job to that. I'd rather just go buy the AVS. Whereas a Sega Genesis, I know I can use like our cables or a SCART cable and just have some plug-and-play solution. I don't think I would ever be interested in an FPGA Genesis.
Just because of the nostalgic feeling of playing the original?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so also you got a lot of plug-and-play solution. You don't really need for like an FPGA to replicate will get the HDMI output. Like the NES is a different story because the NES wouldn't composite natively, so that's why you need like some.
I think there's a myth to dispel with FPGA consoles is they're not 100% accurate. It's not because they're not software that they're not based on the same kind of information that the emulators are based on, right?
Yeah, they use the same information, but you're not doing the same kind of emulation. You try to emulate like on the circuit bus level.
Yeah, you are trying to emulate registers instead of writing software that sends.
I mean,
Graphics
Updates
data,
a register and
Yeah.
4 instructions.
Right. So to
Yeah.
directly answer your question, though, it depends on who wrote the FPGA.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you have somebody like Kevtris and Brian who made the AVS. Those are as perfect as anything could ever be. There's no lag. The amount of bugs are less than the original NES consoles from the RGB Mono.
Well, they had to implement all that.
Yeah, they implemented. No, I meant like just the bugs with their
Yeah.
individual solution. But so stuff like that, yeah. And I mean, I had to move to an apartment that's like the size of from this table to the wall. So the fact that I can have one NT Mini that has 7 different consoles in it, I love it. It's just, but then you see the hobby projects where people don't obsess over it and they go, oh look, I got a Genesis core running. You kind of got a Genesis core running, it's not, so it all depends on who develops it, but I do think it's possible that, 20 years from now, we'll be gaming on FPGA and all these consoles will be more of a museum, which is one of the reasons that I'm pushing, and I didn't even realize this when I started the website, but I'm pushing so hard for people to stop cutting your consoles. Anything you could do, I've been annoying the shit out of Steve and Voltar with this on ways that we could make it so that you could still mod stuff like your NES without actually cutting anything at all. So that when when your Mega 8K fire-breathing TV comes out, you don't have to take that mod out, have a hole in the back of your console, and put a new one in. You just pop it open. In almost any mod that I've ever done, even on ones where I carefully lift pins, on the inside I can always put it back, but you can't put plastic back. So I think it's going to switch over. If we get more really high-quality FPGA cores, it'll switch over that we'll be gaming on those.
I mean, but that's not always true. Even if you don't cut the plastic, if the mod is done by
The
somebody
mod is
who's
done poorly.
yeah, you can destroy stuff on the inside
yes.
there. So I mean, I'd rather see a world where those consoles were not modded at all.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up that point, though. If your mod work is done improperly, if it'll work until it doesn't, and then you might as well just throw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
What's missing in my opinion, for FPGA consoles to really kick off and be great in terms of quality and accuracy is a platform for a lot of people to go in and contribute on it. All of the projects that are occurring right now, they're closed projects, and it's one guy in his bedroom or whatever working on it, and there's no external input. It's not like an emulator where there's a ton of open source emulators and people can contribute and make it better and so on. So I think before we see that, there's not going to be a whole lot of near 100% FPGA consoles for the ones that are missing. Like there's a lot of NES ones right now, but we want to see Genesis like that. We want to see SNK like that. Right?
Yeah, and the Neo Geo one would be a great.
Let's do 32x CD core so I can play Night Trap 32x CD.
The dream.
Buy the remaster.
Luckily, like the Retro USB guy and Kevtris have a certain degree of OCD.
Especially Kevtris.
They're not going to release a product that isn't perfect.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know at least, and I'm sure the same is true for Kevtris, but I know that I've heard that Brian, the Retro USB guy, tested every single NES game on his console to make sure that it worked.
Yeah.
And his wireless controller is coming out relatively soon as well, and he obsessed over having a zero lag wireless controller.
Oh, that's good because I played the NES classics with the wireless 8bit2 was terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, Bluetooth is at least 30 milliseconds.
Yeah, with Bluetooth, that's insanely bad.
Yeah, when I originally reviewed those, it was from the point of view of like, look, I can play a Super Nintendo controller on my iPad, and I loved it because your other solutions were other Bluetooth controllers.
Yeah.
As soon as you plug them into a console, it's like,
I tried to play like Ninja Gaiden 1 and 3 on this, and I sucked so badly. I was like, what the hell? I was so pissed off. I just wanted to go grab the real cartridge and go to the actual NES and play the CRT.
Well, that was an NES classic though.
Yeah, the NES classic.
The controller.
Yeah.
I'm playing on an NES with a Bluetooth controller, and
It is fine. It is fine. That's true.
Yeah, that's how I play. I think people are going to want that wireless controller solution, right? Because this is not 1985. We don't sit 6 inches from our TV anymore. We all have ridiculously sized plasma or
like the
LCD
original
TVs
that wires like this long.
Yeah,
Like in Japan.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, like I don't even know how Nintendo got away with making the NES.
Maybe that's why they stopped making
that
them.
thing.
Yeah.
Who wants to sit that close anymore to their gigantic TV?
Are you guys going to be sad once the last of the CRTs die off?
Mine will still be alive.
Because you know what to repair them.
I'm working on helping preserve that. So I just did an interview last week with the guy Joe, who's a member of the National Video Game Museum in Texas. Somebody immediately after that aired emailed me and said that they work at a museum and they're involved in electronics projects. So I'm going to try to take all of these PVMs that are sitting in the warehouse and try to get them into museums and stuff. So it's really my goal in starting this website out was that maybe 2 or 3 friends and my cousin Scott might be able to benefit from this RGB stuff. I didn't know it would get this big, and now that it is, I'm really working on preservation and trying to keep this stuff lasting forever. So
the bigger worry is not when the last of the CRTs die off, it's when the last of the people that know how to fix the CRTs die off.
I mean, it's a dangerous thing. I mean, it's not something that I'd want to make a guide out of and tell people this is how you open up your CRT,
Right.
this is how you fix it. Because you can kill yourself doing that. So
Maybe we can get Electro Boom YouTube to.
Oh, I love that guy. I wish we could.
So the real answer to the question is we'll never have to because we could always raid a museum.
There you go.
That sounds like the best plan we can do. Instead of building FPGA console, just raid a museum with PVMs.
Yeah, as long as we know how to do that.
But stuff like this is exactly what I love. So you can actually go in and play games on CRTs here that are lined up. So it's, you know, if your average person 10 years from now when these CRTs start to go away has the OSSC Model 3 or whatever is the coolest thing then. But you can still go to events like this and sit down in front of a calibrated DVM and, you know, play your favorite game for 2 hours.
You have to calibrate them?
That's news to me.
I think you have to do that now. Yeah. But I understand your point, yeah.
Yep.
I'm pretty excited for FPGA console, especially the Zimba 3000.
Yes.
Because it's gonna play like 16-bit consoles.
I
Like
think FPGA arcade boards is going to be
Yes.
absolutely amazing.
because MAME is, I heard, is not really accurate at all.
I mean, different games
Yeah.
have different accuracy. There's been a lot of people. I've been trying to get them on the podcast, but I actually can't contact them. Like their email keeps bouncing back. But that have just, I mean, people that have bent over backwards to get both accurate emulation and as low lag as possible. And then I think they've gotten it down to like 1.5 to 2 frames, which is really impressive for software emulation. But unlike, you know, the SNES, which is about 40 million consoles they made or something,
Yeah.
how many Mortal Kombat arcade stand-ups do you think they made? You know, thousands?
Maybe-
Definitely not millions.
Maybe 20,000, something
Yeah.
like that.
So that stuff, you know, that's going to start to disappear a lot faster. And it's also something you can't really collect. You know, most people don't have the room for the arcade machines or the boards. That Mortal Kombat board was like half the size of this table.
It's pretty huge, yeah.
So to have an FPGA accurate, you know, snapshot in history of that thing, I think is going to be phenomenal.
Especially since arcade hardware, like there's some standards, like you got Capcom with the CP system, or the Konami has some standard as well, and so that's where you can make like a CPS FPGA emulator. You could get all the
Right.
Street Fighters. So
Right.
that'll be really, really cool.
So maybe 5 years from now we'll be back and I'll be strapping on a virtual reality helmet to actually look at a stand-up arcade machine inside my virtual reality helmet and have it in there through FPGA. That'd be pretty cool.
And in 10 years, you won't even need the glasses.
Just plug into the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. So really, you're fine because you're next, so you're fine with the time, or
Yeah, that's fine.
so maybe we have time for one last question, or comments, or awesome thing to say.
Yeah, anybody, what do you
Yes.
know? Sorry.
How much my life in gaming YouTube channel was bringing a lot of people to Retrogamer and Upscaling and stuff like that. Because for me it was like I think a lot of people when they released the set of videos telling you teaching how to get to RGB signal and all that stuff, it was a kind of a revelation, and I think a lot of people like me discovered that at that moment.
Yeah.
It's good that that's the source of the revelation, and not some other videos.
Yeah, there's some bad
Figure it
ones
out.
out.
So
Mark,
yeah, actually, I mean, I want to kind of reiterate that for everyone is, since that is kind of the point of this panel, the topic of this panel, if you want to start getting into this stuff, My Life in Gaming
It's the best.
is the best at explaining this.
hands down.
The really high quality videos, if you haven't seen them, simple explanations with really good kind of graphical,
Oh yeah.
kind of.
The guy are video editor in professional live editing shows. Like they do that for as a day job, so it shows the different video they make.
And they're really, really nice guys too. I talk to them
Yes,
on a regular
yeah,
basis.
we
They're
saw
good people.
them last year at the Anime Convention, so pretty very cool guys as well.
I want to get a shout out to Phone Dork also, he's great.
Yeah, he does do great videos. He's not as he only puts them out when he has time to though, so it's not it's not something. No offense with the camera, no offense, dude, but it's not something you could rely on for steady information. But I do love his videos. I've seen all of them. So
Yeah, that's funny to see this bulky guy doing
Oh, yeah, he's the last guy on earth you would think would be into this stuff.
Yeah.
I love big nerds. It's
Yeah.
awesome, you know. Especially me, because I got fat this year, but I'm still pretty strong. And I'm carrying I got a bunch of BVMs a few months ago, and I'm carrying them up 2 flights of stairs. I'm getting it in. And my buddies Jose and Gabe walk out. I'm like, oh, cool, you got monitors. And they're two big dudes that they were one in each hand and they walked away. I'm like, oh, this is making my life so much easier.
Cool. Okay, I think we're gonna end this and go into technical detail with Rene after that. So really thanks to Bob, Rene, Steve, and Nick for being there. We flew them down from the US for most of them, and this crazy guy as you drove from the north of Ontario for being there. So really thank you guys to be here and share your knowledge with all of us.
Thank you guys for
Thank
being
you.
here. Good job.